Hello and welcome to Stillness and Success. I'm your host, Mustafa Nuristani. And today it's a really great joy that I'm connected to a very intelligent human being, someone who has really pioneered in their field and are really showing the way to all of the other people. The way I would like to describe them to you is that they are a holistic orthopedic surgeon. And so orthopedic surgeons mainly deal with, knees and hips and those areas. And so today it's my great joy to welcome Arash Taheri to the podcast. Arash, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Mustafa.
It's great to have you on the podcast, Arash, and I've known you for a couple of years now, and every year I see you're doing so much more and more and more. And recently I heard that you are really taking a new paradigm into, really introducing a new paradigm into orthopedic surgeries, and that is because you're using what is called a robotics assisted arm, which is where you use a robot to have precision in your surgeries. Can you tell us about that a little?
Yeah, so look, I was, one of the pioneers of the technology back in 2015. I was one of the first, or the first, I think, fellowship trained robotic surgeons in Australia. And basically, I found that it was a technology that really improved the accuracy that you could put a joint replacement in, because otherwise you're using metal jigs and slots, and you can use newer technology now, which is 3D printing and things. But for me, I've seen only positive outcomes from using more precision and technology. And
you've done a lot in just a couple of years with this. You've done like thousands of people, huh?
Yeah, I am one of the highest in the Southern Hemisphere, I think. Just shy of 3,000 cases now. Yep.
Wow. And what does this mean for someone who is going through the surgery? What does that mean when you have someone who's using technology such as robotics to do it, as opposed to using traditional ways or also other technology?
So when you do robotics with this system, basically you do a 3D CT scan of the patient's knee or hip. The robotics firm builds a three-dimensional model from that low-dose radiation 3D CT, and then creates a model with the implants and where you want to put them. And then on a 3D rendering software, you can actually move the implants in 6 degrees of freedom and within 0.1 of a degree and 0.1 of a millimeter of accuracy to match the patient's anatomy and whatever philosophy of alignment that you use for your knee or your hip replacement. And then once you're happy with that plan in the technological sense, in the virtual sense, then what you do is you go and execute that plan on the table with a big robot, which effectively looks a bit like an R2-D2 if you're a Doctor Who fan. But basically it's got a robotic arm on it, and it's got, just like I've got different joints in my arm, the robotic arm also has the same number of joints as well. And then on the end of the arm is a handle, and on the end of that handle is a saw blade or a reamer or a burr, depending on what you're doing. And you can do 3 different major operations that you can do from a knee perspective, for example, that need to change the end effector. So you can do a burring for the partial knee, and you can do using the saw for a total knee, and you use a special reamer for reaming the socket out for a hip replacement, for example. And then the robotic arm doesn't allow you to cut anywhere outside of your plan, which allows you to do the surgery in smaller cuts. It has a special leg holder that allows automatic retraction, so you don't need an assistant, which takes out an extra potential, inclusion of infection and instability in the leg. And basically, then you execute that plan and you get feedback on the table from the robotic arm and from the numbers that you collate, because you basically put pins in the femur and the tibia with little stereoscopic infrared cameras, and then the robot knows where the leg is in space, and so it can calculate exactly how much you cut and what you don't cut and what you do. So you're very unlikely to, it's not unheard of, but you're very unlikely to cut major structures around the knee, because there's arteries and nerves in the back, there's ligaments around the side, and then it allows you to really tweak the balance of the knee or the hip. So yeah, so I've found these things to be extremely beneficial on table, and I'm very detailed orientated, so it suits my personality.
It's good to be detail orientated. We don't want our surgeons to kind of cut corners and just be a bit iffy about things and just say, okay, yes, it'll be fine. We'll work it out. It's good to be detail orientated, and it's good to really thrive in your field because you're obviously very passionate about this. Now, you're also someone who I just referred to as a holistic surgeon. Now, when we hear about holistic, we traditionally don't think, surgeons. So how does one describe themselves as a holistic surgeon?
Look, I'm sure there are more holistic surgeons out there. I'm just being my authentic self, Mustafa, but for me, and I can't generalize really, but for me, being holistic is about treating the patient as a whole rather than seeing them as a knee replacement potential candidate. Do you know what I mean? I tend to look at pain and disease in a far more broader sense. I don't necessarily believe only Western medicine and mainstream science in the way that I approach health, and I don't think you can necessarily disagree that consciousness is the primary producer of your physical body in many ways, and so how you perceive your world will alter the way that you respond to your world, and that alteration in how you respond to the world, even from a mainstream perspective, alters your physiology. And so, and we all know this in our meditation practices, and how we drop into a nice sort of parasympathetic state, which is a rest and digest state, rather than a fight or flight state, for example. And what I've found, I see upwards of 150 patients between me and my fellow, every week. And you get a feel for people, and generally what I've found is that people are really in states of somewhat of crises, mental health wise, or their situation has because a lot of stuff is happening in people's lives at the moment, and I rarely see someone coming to me going, oh, look, I had nothing better to do. I just thought I'd come and get an opinion to see whether I might need a knee replacement. No, that doesn't tend to happen to me. Normally, people are really, they've got a lot of other problems in their life that then I feel manifests as a state of dis-ease, in effect, and so all disease, it's the word says it all, is dis-ease. And so if you start looking for where their dis-ease is in their life, you'll actually find out that there are other problems that they possibly could help themselves, and then thus anything you do for their knee will be even better received from a mainstream perspective, or may have some fundamental self-healing, which can happen too. We see that in many times. First of all, what most people probably in our audience won't know is that osteoarthritis, even from the mainstream perspective, right, has no cause. We call it primary osteoarthritis, right? So when something's called primary osteoarthritis, they're just saying we know how to identify it. When we x-ray a knee, we know that these things happen, and we've got this pattern of things that occur that leads to this thing that we've labelled as osteoarthritis, but we don't actually know the fundamental cause of it. There are causes of osteoarthritis that we do know of, like infection and trauma and malalignment and various other things, but if someone just rocks up with that otherwise normal and starts getting pain in their knee, then we don't really have a cause for it. We just know how to treat it, or we know what we can do to help treat the symptoms of it. And so the symptoms are predominantly pain, and and sometimes they can be mechanical too, clicking, clatching, that sort of thing. But mostly it's we're pain. We are specialising in improving people's function and reducing their pain, and those two things shouldn't really, in my mind, be a total knee replacement first. If you want to improve someone's pain and function, you improve their pain modality, the way that they perceive pain, from head down to their pain receptors, and from their pain receptors back up to their head. We're a segmental, neurological creature. So then you can look from a holistic perspective at the electromagnetics of your body and the electromagnetics of your health, and you can look at it from an Ayurvedic perspective. And I'm planning to do the Maharishi course in August, for example, the bridging course for medical doctors to do Ayurvedic medicine as well, because I'm very interested in how diet, your consciousness, and all of those other things tie in to what I've perceived in my own conscious journey as a very busy and successful orthopedic surgeon in my field. I've seen that there's more to this than meets the eye, more to this than anything that our mainstream medicine can tell us. So if you go into an alpha state, things get better. So let's look at all the things and all the ways we can get patients into alpha states. I use breath work, I use breathing techniques. So these are the things that will improve patients exponentially. So I have people that have trouble with pain after knee replacement, and I do simple box breathing techniques with them while I'm helping them bend their knee a little bit more, takes them out of that fight or flight and into a rest and digest. I identify things, in their ethos, in their day-to-day. What is causing you stress in your life? Because stress hypersensitizes your pain pathways. So everything can be alleviated by alleviating your stress. And we know this in TM, don't we? I mean,
Absolutely. I think it's so beautiful to hear your words there, Arash, because you see, consciousness is primary. And if we are able to take care of our consciousness, and what we do in Transcendental Meditation is we directly access that field of all possibility, the field of all intelligence, all energy. And when we come out, the physiology is in a much better state because it has gained that profound rest, which you mentioned, brought on by that global coherence in alpha that we experience in the mind. And the other thing is, I'll tell you a fun little story. I was speaking to a very well-known Vaidya. So a Vaidya is an Ayurvedic doctor. And they told me that knee problems come because the person has a lot of pressure and responsibility in their lives. It's like the pressure is like on their shoulders and they are bending and the knees crumble. So when someone has got knee issues, is because they've got a lot of pressure in their lives.
Let me tell you, that is exactly the sorts of things that I've noticed in my practice. Purely anecdotal, I can't prove it. I don't want to get done by APRA because I'm saying that this is definitely the way. All I can say is anecdotally, right? From my perspective, what I've seen, and I've started to explore it with patients, is that your knees, so your body seems to be an analogy of your consciousness. So, for example, if someone is having trouble with their eye, they may have something in their consciousness where they don't want to see something. They want to look away from something in their life. Knees and hips, what I've found is that from a consciousness perspective, what do your hips do? Your hips transfer, they support your upper body weight and transfer it into your lower body weight, and they help you locomote. They help you get from point A to point B. Now, what I see a lot of, and it sounds, woo-woo, but this is what I see, this is what I've observed, because I've become conscious and aware of it, is that people, and I now question people and I ask them directly, and so what I've found is that people who have hip problems, a lot of them, what they have is a lack of, or a sense of, or a perspective of lack of support in their life. Mm-hmm. And so, or they feel stuck. They feel something is sticking in there. They don't feel like they're progressing and moving in their life. And that goes for knees too. But the other thing that I found with knees is they get very stiff. That is the cardinal feature, if you like, of an arthritic joint, is that it gets stiff. Now, the one commonality in your consciousness about being stiff is you're stiff in your mind, Mustafa. A lot of my patients, I will suggest things to them, right? I'll say, look, you should try losing weight, you should try a bit of exercise. They will sometimes have a problem for every solution, that you're trying to provide for them. They will say, oh, I can't do it because of this. Oh, I can't do that because of this. I can't do that. And I just say to them, have you noticed that you are a little bit inflexible in your approach with what I've suggested to you? And perhaps if you were a little bit more flexible in your mind, you may become more flexible in your body. I know it sounds woo. But the reality of it is that's what I've seen. When people actually take my advice and they go, well, what does it hurt? I mean, all right, I'll just be a bit more easygoing with things and just go with whatever is suggested to me, or I'll, be a bit more whatever. And they come back and go, you know what? I feel a lot better. Like my knees are a lot better, and it's all anecdotal. And mainstream science will just say, oh yeah, this is just a blah blah blah, a placebo effect, and no. But I don't see placebo effect as a bad thing. In medicine, it's kind of written off as it's no better than a placebo. If something's no better than, whereas I see placebo effect as one of the most important effects in modern medicine that is absolutely ignored. Because you see, what a placebo effect is telling you is that thought alone can heal and cure that person. It's saying that I'm going to give you a sugar pill, I'm going to tell you it's a fancy new drug that we're testing to cure cancer. If you take it, we can't tell you if it is or it isn't, but if you suddenly start getting better from your cancer, you probably know that you're taking the good one. And so they have this belief, deep-seated conscious belief, that, oh my God, I'm going to get cured from cancer from taking this tablet. And they come back and they get cured. Guess what they get called in mainstream medicine? Oh, placebo. Isn't that where we should be focusing all of our efforts in research?
This is a really beautiful point, Arash, because what you are pointing to is the power of consciousness and how we can transform our lives by thinking alone. What we need to experience, though, is that infinite field of all possibilities. And then we go there in Transcendental Meditation, which I'll come in a moment, and I want to know that when you learned and how you came about to knowing about it. But in TM, that's what we're doing. We're experiencing nothingness, and from that nothingness, we can project any thought, any idea, and that becomes our reality. And with the placebo effect, what they're doing is that they're taking something and they have this idea that, okay, this medicine is making me better. And then that becomes their reality, which just goes to how much we are able to direct our lives, have control over our destiny, if only we knew how to have the technique to do it. Now, coming to you as a person who practices TM, first of all, how does a surgeon find about TM? How did you find out about it? And then why did you decide it was something you wanted to pursue and learn?
Basically, I've always been interested in esoteric sort of meditative practices probably for the last 10 or 12 or 15 years probably. I was a martial arts instructor at the age of 18. I've been training karate since I was 6 years old. So I've always been heavily involved in semi-spiritual practices, because you do a short meditation at the beginning and end of every class, and you learn the sheer power of breath and your consciousness on how it can make you feel, even in the face of feeling threatened physically, in martial arts, for example. So I did have that fundamental understanding of the mind's power over the body, but I lost all of that in medical school. Like I I shifted my interests. I was a ring fighter, like actual sort of with, in an elevated ring, and I did do some bouts, full contact, and I was like, well, I better stop doing this at about 30 in medical school if I want to become a surgeon in case I get injured. So I started, moving more and more into mainstream medicine and learning all that sort of stuff without so much interest in the esoteric and in the higher states of consciousness. And then at the end of I fast forward right to, I've become an orthopedic surgeon. I've done, 1,100 surgeries in my first year. I was tired, I was burnt out, and I was about to go on my fellowship where I learnt my robotics in LA. And just before I went, one of my friends, who ironically doesn't meditate anymore, but he says to me, hey, want to come to, Ajahn Brahm's meditation retreat? He's got a Buddhist temple nearby in north of where I am in Perth. And he says, why don't you come to a beginner's thing of meditation? It'll help you relax maybe, blah, blah, blah. I said, cool. So I went along and I just sat down and we did this half-an-hour meditation. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want this feeling again. I was like, wow. And it just took me back straight to those times where I was, putting myself into a nice meditative state after a karate class, or, at the end of a hard workout, or any of those flow states that we get into. It just brought me back to that sense. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I was like so annoyed that I was about to go away on a fellowship that I couldn't do more meditation. And so I went to LA, and it was the year that Headspace was introduced in LA.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with it. And ironically, it was the same guy who got me into meditation. His name's Mike, a friend of mine. And he said, why don't you get this app? And so that you can meditate with an app. And during that period, I basically clocked the app. I clocked it. I did everything, and then I did some programs twice, like the creativity one, the focus one. I just was a complete addict. I was addicted. I was doing 3 to 4 hours a day meditation.
Wow.
Yeah, for 9 months, Mustafa, and because I could. Suddenly, my contact hours were very minimal. We were operating once or twice a week only. The clinics once or twice a week, and that's all my contact hours were. I was there pro bono. I wasn't getting paid, and so I basically just observed, and then I got involved, and I got to do a bit of, because I'm a US citizen, so they allowed me to do a bit of operating as well. And I learned all this robotics there, and the meditation at that time really just enlivened everything in my consciousness to learn everything I could about this robotics platform. It gave me so much connectivity with my department back home, and the CEO, with the various parties, the stakeholders, to get this sort of unheard of technology into a hospital that was completely off the radar. And like the rep said to me, he goes, and he's this, really nice French Canadian guy, and he's just like, Arash, look, I'd love to say that this is going to happen, but like, sorry, man, like this is $1 million robot, and like Joondalup was just not on the radar. Like, sorry, man. And I'm like, Patrick, you do your job, and I'll do mine, okay? You trust me on this. I'm going to make this happen. And so I just use meditation and all the different packs of meditations on this Headspace app to help me with that. But then as time went on, I did more and more meditation through. I got 8 or 9 different apps. And I just started going through them all, the one after the other, and none of them was satisfying me. None of them satisfied my need for more and more and more higher states of consciousness. I was doing breath work at the time, and sound healing, and all these other practices, and I was just like, I just was junkie for higher states of consciousness. And so every time I looked for more stuff, TM kept popping up. Transcendental, this word transcendental meditation. What does transcendental mean? Oh, that's so interesting. And I just, for some reason, never actually got to it. And so it took me a good 10 years of meditating before one day, I don't know, I just suddenly go, right, today I'm going to, I think actually, do you know what it was? I was down at Cottesloe Beach, which is where the TM Centre was in Perth at the time. And I think I walked past a sign that said, there's a TM information centre, the thing going right in the main entrance right here. And as I walked by, I'm like, cool, I'll just walk in and take a look. This is what I've been thinking of. And so one of those, synchronicities that just led me to and then the rest is sort of history. I then spent, because I've only been doing TM since 2023, I think we worked out. So I basically, again, fast-tracked myself during that time to Siddha training as soon as I realized it, because TM has totally revolutionized my use of apps for meditation. 9 different apps. I can show them to you if you want. 9 different apps. I've clocked them all, and TM gets me to that deep transcendent state that puts you in communication with all that is. And you start realizing you are all that is too. And your reality is just an outward reflection of your inward reality. And so therefore, if you're having problems in your life for X, Y, and Z reason, you've got to look inwards, not outwards. And you've got to start taking control of your life. And you start empowering yourself, and everything just gets better then. As soon as you start realizing you're in control and it's not for others to tell you what to do and what not to do, and start seeing things for what they really are, everything gets better. Everything is better. And so I talk to my patients exactly like I'm talking to you. One of the things for me that I've always been is just consistent. It may not be everyone's cup of tea. I gather that, and there will be people that, and a lot of my patients, Mustafa, because I wear all these crystals, because these are not decorative, believe it or not. These are all scientifically backed conscious elevators of your consciousness. I've got a gold Merkaba, then I've got Moldavite encased in gold, 17.7 carats, and then I've got a arc crystal, an advanced resonance kinetics crystal that amplifies your field. Then I've got a 0.I toroids with Moldavite inside it, which is a highest potency crystals. Then I've got a ring of amethyst. And so the reason for that, this is what we call it in the spiritual community. They call this a crystal grid. Yeah, it creates again. This is all my consciousness being imbued into what this is all meaning for me, and so it really doesn't matter if it doesn't mean anything to you or my audience. What it matters is that it means what it means to me and how it makes me feel when I wear these crystals and how I enliven. And so from my understanding of esoterics, this is the electromagnetic field that you are integrating and altering, that we all have so everything in electromagnetics travels in a toroid. I'll move that closer. See that? So that's all phi ratio toroid. So basically the spiral that you see of the galaxies, the spiral that you see of whirlpools, cyclones, etc. This is also the whirling of the electromagnetic toroid of the whole Earth, of every human and their heart and brain coherence, which has been demonstrated and measurable, that creates a biofield. So my belief and my understanding is where science and consciousness are going to meet is in medicine. I'm going to help that occur through my abilities and through my understandings and through my vision and ability to just step back from things and not just be too tunnel visioned on I must do a joint replacement because I'm an orthopedic surgeon and that's all I need to. No, we can treat the person. We can talk to the person. We can let our field, our conscious field, enter their conscious field. Our biofield can heal. So like certain channelers, they say things like, a healer never heals a person. All they do is they generate a state of being, a conscious field, a bioenergy, electricity, any way you want to describe it. The woo-woos will say it's just, your heart chakra, blah, 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 or whatever. And then the scientific field will say it's a biofield. They're all the same name, different names for the same thing, electromagnetics. Everything's energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's a famous Nikola Tesla quote. And I think as soon as we start moving away from the physical and say, look, the physical is there, not because the physical is all that there is, but the physical is there because there's an electromagnetic force of consciousness that condenses into a scalar wave to create physical matter. And that's what physicality is. And so if you want to get to the root cause of something, you do it at the conscious level first, and everything else gets better after. It's because an example we see of that, so people can relate to this, is in, say, physiotherapy, for example, right? So for someone who's in a absolute state of fight or flight, physiotherapy, a beautiful physiotherapist may still inflame the hell out of that person's knee, even though whereas the different person, or the same person in a different state of consciousness, the same physiotherapy, the same modality of treatment gives that person an absolute magnificent benefit, and their muscles grow and everything gets better. And this is why we see such a variation in our mainstream science and the way that we look at things in terms of statistical significance, because it really depends on the state of consciousness of that person, whether they're going to get benefits from non-physical modalities of treatment. But I believe we are on the verge of it. That's what I believe. As you can see, I'm a bit passionate about it, but I really feel that that's where we're moving.
It's a really beautiful understanding of consciousness and how consciousness is primary. And if we are able to be on that field and heal from that field, then we are doing something that's so much more fulfilling, because you are going to the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is on that basis of consciousness. And for example, Maharishi introduced this Vedic vibration therapy. And Vedic vibration therapy, or Vedic sound therapy, is just recognizing that the whole physiology is nothing but vibration. And the parts that are not in good way, for example, there's some disease somewhere, it's because the sounds are incoherent. And so you listen to the sound specific for that region, and it creates orderliness. The sound goes back to order, and the person is healed. So there's no trying to do anything. You just listen easily, and then the whole thing comes. And then there's the experts. He trained experts to apply this Vedic vibration therapy, where they actually go and they blow air on those different parts where there's some illness or some problem, and then it just heals. And so it's recognizing that consciousness is fundamental, and if we deal on that level, on the level of consciousness, then we are creating holistic health for everyone. And so it's a really beautiful thing, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, Arash, because not only are you a pioneer in robotics, you're also a pioneer in holistic consciousness.
The yin to the yang. This is what I'm here for. This is my mission. I've realized this. It's becoming more and more clear to me that the reason, because I've been, for obvious reasons, heavily ostracized in my profession. Not only from a professional jealousy perspective, but also for this esoteric. I've overheard from registrars and others that, apparently Arash will just go and tell them to meditate or something, and they say facetious things like that, or they also say I've heard them say things like, why is he happy all the time? He is always happy. That guy never stops smiling. What is going on there? Like there's some conspiracy that I'm happy all the time. It's funny, right? And I hope this reaches them, because they need to get happy too, because happiness is a choice. It's from within. It's everything around you. You can either choose to say, that happened to me, or that happened for me. And as soon as you make that paradigm shift, what is this teaching me? How am I learning from this perceptually negative thing? But what am I gaining from it? There has to be a reason it's happening, because everything is happening for you, because you are the creator of your own reality. Through your thoughts, actions, emotions, and intentions. All of those things lead to where you end up. And I don't think anyone can argue with that, because I think that's the fundamentals of reality, because the glass is half full versus the glass is half empty. The glass is just there and it's got water in it, okay? It's how you perceive it.
But you see, I just want to make a point here, Arash. The reason why some people see the glass half empty is because they feel a little empty inside. There's a lack of fulfillment. And lack of fulfillment, like you said, maybe they're jealous about this, or lack of fulfillment leads to anger, jealousy, envy, because there's some lack within. Now, you also said so beautifully that when we practice meditation, we experience that inner happiness, and that just comes out. It just radiates. We're increasing our vibration at a positive level, and we're radiating that. So we don't mind. Now, the neurophysiology of someone who practices TM is that they use their prefrontal cortex, which gives them greater judgment, more creativity. They're more able to see the bigger picture. And so all of these things are happening to you as well because of your practice of TM, that it's opening your consciousness. It's opening your awareness.
100%. 100%. I attribute the acceleration of my mission to Transcendental Meditation. And also the biggest thing I believe that has helped me with my esoteric healing and practices around that, and where I want to go with it, is the relationship between sound, which is just a tone, which is just another frequency, and its effect on the human mind. And that how the frequency that's coming out of your brain can be measured using electromagnetic skull caps, EEGs. We've got it in mainstream. That wave is just going out into the universe, right? So I've recognized that we're all tuning forks from that perspective. We've all got a frequency, and that frequency, through sympathetic resonance, just from a scientific perspective, attracts the same frequency. And as Maharishi says, birds of a feather flock together, don't they? So this is the science. This is where science and esotericism and guruism and all of the ancient Vedics. I believe ancient Vedic technology and ancient Vedic science is modern day quantum physics. Okay, that they are the same, basically, from my perspective. I haven't delved into it deeply, but
no, Maharishi, the founder of Transcendental Meditation, was a physicist, and he had people like John Hagelin and Larry Domash.
Fundamental,
yes,
physics. And there is, and my understanding of physics and spirituality is they are one in the same, Mustafa. I don't care what the mainstream says, and I'm probably the first in my field in orthopedics to come out publicly and say it, but I'm saying it to you. Science and spirituality should be side by side, hand in hand. They should never be separated. And you know where the separation came from in Western world? It came from back when simple thing where Sir Isaac Newton, Newtonian physics, the guru of all physical, the apple drops from the tree, hits him in the head, and he falls backwards and says, "Oh my goodness, how did that happen?" And everything, all the laws of physics came from that, right? That's what we get told. Now, the reality of it is, when that apple dropped on his head, he had epiphanies. He goes, "Oh my God, who dropped it? Why did it drop on my head? What was the chances of me?" He had an esoteric moment. And it fundamentally changed him. And he wanted to, and this is real, this is not just my opinion, he really wanted to, according to the scriptures that I've been reading, he wanted to actually look at all the non-physical aspects of physics, not just the physical ones. And guess who stepped in and stopped him? The Catholic Church. So at the time, and they came in and they said, "Listen, you're physical, you're medical, you're a doctor, you're a whatever, a scientist. You stay in your lane. Your lane is physical, and then our lane is the non-physical." Okay, so that spiritual stuff of who dropped it and why did it drop on you, and all these philosophical questions. God did it, and that's our domain. All right, and so as a result of that, mainstream medicine has just become further and further and further away from the esoteric practices, which my understanding is still happening in the church, behind closed doors. They're all doing it, and they know how important it is. So we need to reintegrate science and spirituality back to where Isaac Newton first wanted it. So if you're a Newtonian physics expert. Go look his history up. He wanted to do it. So you've been following someone halfway. His other half is the spirituality. It is, and it's all those unanswered questions, and it's where we bridge sort of Newtonian physics with quantum mechanics, and we bridge it all together. It comes through as what we thought: consciousness, awareness. Physical reality is only what you perceive it.
Thank you, Arash. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming to this podcast and sharing your beautiful world with us. It's a really joy to be connected with you. And I also want to thank my audience for their company. Stay tuned for next week, where we connect to another beautiful human being and talk about their wonderful lives. Have a great week. Take care.